Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Kyle Show, an interview podcast where my friend Lewis and I interview entrepreneurs, investors, internet creators, and people just doing really interesting things. Today we have on Colton Sakamoto, the co-founder of Pomp Crypto Jobs.
We talk with Colton in this conversation about how he got involved working with Anthony Pompliano, commonly known as Pomp, the popular crypto investor and influencer. We talk about how and why they chose to start a jobs website and a course together. We also get into Colton's thoughts on the future of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's a fun conversation. Colton's a young guy. I'm excited for you to listen to this conversation. Hope you learn as much as we did. Enjoy. Colton, welcome to the Lewis and Kyle Show. Super hyped to be doing this podcast with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So your last name, this is probably a question you get all the time, but I didn't see an answer on the internet, so this is why we have a podcast, right, to ask questions we can't find the answers to online. Your last name is Nakamoto. You work in crypto. Is this a coincidence?
It's Sakamoto.
Is this a pseudonym? Oh, my, yeah, I got it. Okay. Go for it. What is it?
Not a coincidence. It's funny because no one ever asked me this, until about 6 months ago, and now it's like the most commonly asked question I get. It's my real last name. Real name's Colton, real last name's Sakamoto.
I mean, do you think that you were led down this path because of your last name? Like Satoshi Nakamoto, like it's really uncanny. I want to point out how insane it is. Right, exactly. Yes. Like I was very impressed with the creativity.
Yeah, when I first learned about Bitcoin, obviously I did my research, discovered Satoshi. Like, dang, that's that's pretty close to Sakamoto. And I think, honestly, it bought me some goodwill with Pomp when I first talked to him. He probably thought the same thing, too, honestly. And I know Polina, for a while, thought it was a pseudonym, too.
Yeah, we actually...
That's the same Polina that we're released... probably just released an episode with, depending on when this one's coming out.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Kyle and I are recording right after this, the
intro,
outro, to wrap that up.
So why don't we get in a little bit to that story then of how Pomp Crypto Jobs came to be. I know a little bit about it, but you'll tell it better. So just walk us through that.
Yeah. So I graduated last year with my MBA. Around this time, got started working for a mortgage company. Had no clue, what I wanted to do. Was pretty heavily invested in Bitcoin and following the crypto space pretty close. New Year's Day, I was sitting on my couch watching football, and Pomp tweets out, "I need to hire a chief meme officer." I had made memes with my baseball buddies, just kind of messing around, and so I figured maybe I'll send Pomp a meme. At least I'll get a laugh out of it. I kind of talked myself out of it, kind of went back and forth, and then I made a meme of him and Peter Schiff, and I was like, it's too good not to send him.
Who's Peter Schiff for non-Bitcoiners?
Peter Schiff is a guy that's mostly right but wrong about Bitcoin. Peter and Bitcoiners see eye to eye on pretty much everything, but he's just the guy that doesn't come to the same conclusion. That Bitcoin should be the answer. Peter is kind of stuck on his ways. Mm-hmm. He's kind of figured he's going to die on this hill, and it's funny because his son Spencer clowns him, and he's a total Bitcoin maxi. So hilarious.
Yeah, I know that it's kind of part of Schiff's brand now to be against it, and it's he's got so much capital invested in being a hater that is he even really a hater?
He's too far gone. Yeah, he's always the bottom signal too. That's what people say on Twitter is we're hitting a huge Bitcoin dump, and then it's when's Peter going to tweet that Bitcoin's over so we can rebound and get back to this bull market? So I made a meme of Pomp holding Peter like a baby in one of those baby Bjorn things. So I sent it to Pomp. I went back to watching football. A few minutes later, checked my phone. He goes, "Pretty good." Dang, Pomp responded. That's pretty cool. And then he tweeted it out, and it got a bunch of retweets, favorites. And then Peter actually commented on it "You guys are going to be the babies crying when Bitcoin goes to zero," or something like this too. So it was just hilarious. And then Pomp kind of was asking, what I'm doing, how I make the memes, that type of stuff. So went back and forth via DMs for a little bit. And then we hopped on a call. The next day, I kind of walked him through my story. He said, "Hey, look, tons of people want to work in crypto. Don't know how. There's not really a centralized location for crypto jobs. Do you want to help me build this job board?" I was like, Absolutely. So I was working for the mortgage company. I was giving like some baseball lessons on the side. I was already pretty busy, but told them I was all in, and then got to working on it immediately.
Yeah, there's a lot
prior
there.
tech experience, right?
Yeah, none. I took like basic coding classes in college, but no expert.
Yeah, there was one funny meme I saw on your Twitter, and it was like the black and the white handshake, and it was like no website experience, no crypto experience, me building a crypto job board website. I thought that was a good one.
Totally.
I get the origin of that handshake meme. It's like is it Stallone or is it Arnold? And it's like a really long, intense one.
I don't know, but yeah, they're both just like super jacked, like veins everywhere.
I know the scene.
A lot of Chad energy.
Classic '80s strongman move me.
Yeah,
it's an awesome
hilarious.
scene. It's
So-
like the longest handshake in movie history. Anyway, great meme format.
Exactly.
I mean, I think like Pomp gives you an opportunity. It's just pretty much a no-brainer from the beginning. But the reason that we invited you onto the show is because of the intersection that you're working in, which is jobs and crypto. Like I think we all here believe that the next 10 years will be dominated by crypto. That software ate the world. Its blockchains are going to eat the world. And job creation is one of the most important pieces of any like economy. And so being at that intersection, I think, is super exciting. Did you have some precognition about doing that, or was it just like Pomp drops this thing in your lap and you're like, wow, this is the luckiest day of my life?
Yeah, more of the latter. I remember just sitting there and being like, wait, he's pitching me on this idea? Like, this is an absolute no-brainer. I'm in. And I remember Pomp being like, well, I said I was in, and I don't think he was fully sold on me yet. I just like totally jumped at it. I'm like, I'm doing this. Like, this is it. I'm doing it. I got to working on it immediately. I messaged him the next day, hey, I'm all in. Let's get to work. And then, the rest is history.
So a question I have for you, this is kind of Kyle and I have this terminology we stole from someone else called clouds and dirt, where some of our questions on the podcast are like the big picture, kind of like the last question Kyle asked. My next one's the dirt, right? Very specifics. So there's something now, I was reading about job board sites yesterday and prep for this and with a bunch of other ideas. And there's now something called JAS, or JABAS, job board as a service, where basically people will create a job board because niche job sites have gotten so popular that now you can like one click make them. Is that what you did, or you made it yourself? What was like the actual process of building the website?
Yeah, so it was software. It wasn't as easy as like a one-click deal. There was a lot of work that went into it, but made it pretty easy for someone like me without coding experience to go in and do that. But I customized it the way I wanted it to. I wanted it to be super easy for users. I wanted companies to be able to post their jobs super easy. And since we've made a lot of upgrades too, as well.
How many?
One question I have. Oh, go
Lewis?
for it, Kyle. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. What were you going to say?
Okay. I was going to ask, so it seems cool, right, and noble to be people need jobs, companies need postings, companies recruits. Can you explain the actual business model? Like, how is this site making money? Why is it worth investing your time and energies in besides just being, like, helpful?
Sure. Yeah, so we don't want to charge job seekers anything. We want it to be completely free for them to use. We want the job search to be as easy as possible for them. The way it works is companies actually pay to post, and that's on a subscription basis. So depending on how many jobs they want to post, it's priced accordingly.
Do you have a premium offering, like top of the stack? Because you're at the point now where you have so many job postings that being in the top 1, 2, or 3 might actually make
That's a good question.
The number of applicants.
Yeah, so we have a featured company option, and that puts the company in this revolving door, and that's pretty much the most exclusive. That's like the BlockFis, the Coinbases, the Geminis, the Krakens, and then there's also featured jobs, and kind of like you said, that puts a specific job posting at the top and highlights it in the website colors. And what we found is a lot of the startups like to use that just to highlight one specific position.
Like that key hire.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, it's good marketing too. Like one of Lewis's things is that he likes to look at job postings for companies to get a sense of where they're going. So like, having strong job postings on a website like Pomp Crypto Jobs, I think, speaks to brand identity, more than people expect it to. and hopping on there and seeing that BlockFi has whatever it is 70 open jobs, it's like, wow, they've got to be growing quickly.
Totally. And they've actually hired 20 people specifically from our job board just since we've launched in January, which is awesome to see.
That's incredible.
Yeah, that was going to be my question too, is how many people have gotten jobs? Do you know? Do you have any numbers?
Yeah, so actually getting hiring data from companies is like pulling teeth. Like, they hold their cards pretty tight. I know that Coinbase has a few hires. I know that Gemini has a few. Exodus, BlockFi obviously has 20, and then there's been some more sprinkled in at startups. I would say probably close to 40 or so so far.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any piece of kickback from that? Because I know it's like the recruiting business in general, right? If you make a key traditional finance hire, you might get a percentage of their salary for however many years they stay or something. Do you have anything like that in the works, or not quite yet? Or is it in your sights?
Pomp and I have kicked around the idea of launching a recruiting arm for more specialized roles. And that's kind of in the works right now, but not directly with the job board right now.
Mm-hmm. What skills do you think are most in demand? There's a bunch of ways to ask this question. I want to make sure that it's the best way to ask it.
If you miss something, I can ask the other pieces.
What skills are most in demand in crypto? What skills are demanding the most money? And what skills do you think have the highest upside for learning?
Yeah, so first I would say engineers and developers, especially with the startups.
Solidity?
They're always looking for quality. Yeah, Solidity, and then some UI, UX stuff as well. Really just depends, what the company's looking to do. That's number one. And then number two is the non-technical bucket. And a lot of times they're looking for people from traditional legacy finance worlds that can make the jump. But furthermore, they're looking for people that just are really passionate about crypto. That's kind of why we designed the crypto course, is to help people with non-technical backgrounds get in front of as many recruiters as possible and kind of bridge that gap into this new world.
So another dirt question. For people who aren't Ethereans and are Bitcoin maximalists, they are not learning Solidity. What's the dev skill and demands for non-Ethereum people who don't believe in that? Making an opinion myself, of course. Just there's a group of people out there who are like, Ethereum's not anyway.
We got our whole show canceled for real if you slip up, Lewis.
They'll come with their pitchforks. Good question. I know there's a lot of development on the Lightning Network. Yeah, they're hard forks. A lot of developments happening on the Lightning Network, and then companies like Sovereign are actually trying to build DeFi on top of Bitcoin. I want to sort of tread lightly and not back myself into a corner with my lack of technical knowledge. Mm-hmm. But I know that there's a lot of exciting projects with that. And actually with the course, we had one of the lead Lightning developers actually in the course and then come back and talk as a guest speaker as well. He works directly with Jack Mallers at Strike.
Wow.
And he's, I think, the VP of engineering at Strike.
Do you mind sharing what Strike is?
Yeah, so Strike...
My mom gets real lost on the crypto pods.
Totally. So Strike is essentially like a Venmo or like a Cash App that utilizes the Lightning Network to... You can send money anywhere across the globe, and it converts to currency, and it utilizes the Lightning Network to make that transaction.
And Lightning's on top of Bitcoin. Correct.
Lightning is the second layer on top of Bitcoin that basically just speeds up, payments.
I also don't want to back myself into, a corner of not knowing anything, but the common piece of feedback on Lightning Network and DeFi on top of Bitcoin is like, you're creating these third-party institutions that must be trusted. At least that's the criticism that I've heard. I'm not sure if you're qualified to answer that question, but do you think that's true?
I think that there does need to be this layer of development on top of Bitcoin for it to fully scale and for it to reach its potential. And I think there's a lot of, kind of like I said, exciting development happening. In terms of if it needs to be fully decentralized, I'm not entirely sure, how that's going to play out and how that looks. But I think the first step is just putting something in motion so it can compete, with the Ethereums on that front. I think Bitcoin's its own beast and should be respected, in its own category. But I think also it needs to go toe-to-toe with Ethereum and some of these other ones too.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question before and I'm going to stay out of this entirely because I just don't like corners. I'm literally standing in the corner of this room, so that's my limit for today. I have a question about audience first building, and then I do want to transition to the course because we've brought that up a couple of times, and that's second big point on our roadmap. But a lot of the reason that Kyle and I started this podcast is the concept David Perell popularized of audience first building, which is essentially if you just have a media arm that's successful, then you kind of build any product tangentially related to your media, it's like successful immediately. So what was your experience launching something with Pomp, with him having maybe, let's say, 400,000 or 500,000 followers on Twitter, 80,000 people on his email list, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I got a website now. So you're very different from the people who are going with 0 customers and a 0-person email list right off the bat.
Yeah, so he actually has almost 1 million followers. I was talking to this with him yesterday, and he's like, yeah, I'm getting like 5,000 new followers every day, which is absurd.
Yeah.
I only have like 500,000, 600,000, something like that. Yeah, crazy. And he does a great job with building his audience. He told me something a few days ago that stuck with me, and I'm not sure if it's his quote directly, but he says, first time entrepreneurs optimize for the product. Second time entrepreneurs optimize for the audience or the distribution. And I think the thing that I've really noticed is how important that distribution channel is. People like Balaji and Naval talk about it all the time, but you can go directly to the consumer. And if you have, a loyal following, you can essentially drive traffic to anywhere.
And so in your experience, the website had traction very quickly.
Very quickly, yeah. And that's
right.
Exactly.
This is me asking if the theory actually worked.
Yeah, the theory worked, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, the second piece of that, right, the other product that Pomp's kind of brought to his audience, and one thing I'll point out here that I think is I got a kick out of with the podcast is projects that are younger than the podcast. So, in our head, the podcast is still relatively new, even though this is, 15 or 16 months in. But we're talking about a course that you created on a platform that was created by a guest we interviewed before she even started the company, because we interviewed Wes KO before she even launched Maven. So it's cool to see kind of people who've been following the podcast for a long time. There's people, it's the right time to start now, because 10 months later you're going to have traction and have helped 20 people get their jobs and have people building courses on top of your platforms that are bringing in multiple 6 figures. So what is the Pomp Crypto course? What's your involvement with that?
Right, and the origin story too, because you've got we walked through Pomp Crypto Jobs. You did a good job with that. He's like, why don't you do this course with me?
Yeah, so similar thing kind of happened there with the course. I believe it was a week before we launched the job board. Pomp DM'd me. I didn't even have his number yet at this point. He DM'd me, hey man, do you want to help out with this course I'm building too? I'm like, yeah, why not? So he put me in contact with someone from Maven. It wasn't called Maven at the time, actually. He kind of filled me in, and basically what they just needed was like logistical help just to make sure everything ran smoothly. This was before the beta cohort. And so the course, like you said, is built on top of Maven, and it started as just a fundamentals of Bitcoin and crypto course that Pomp taught. We ran our beta cohort with about 40 students, ran super well, but we found halfway through the course that about half of these students really want to work in crypto, but they don't know how. Similar problem we're trying to solve with the job board. And so the big jump between the beta cohort and the next one was just how do we give job seekers as many resources as possible through the course? How do we make it worth their while, and how do we get them in front of as many recruiters as possible? So the big thing from beta cohort to cohort 2 was we launched a virtual job fair where we had companies like Coinbase, OKCoin, Ava Labs come talk directly to the students. We've actually had a number of students already get hired, which is super awesome to see.
Did you go through the course yourself as a way to learn?
No, so I was just like an administrator with the first beta cohort, and then kind of learned as I went. Obviously, I'm pretty familiar with crypto. Had talked with Pomp for a while, but was on the other side there.
So what are your thoughts around crypto, in general? Like, I made a big statement that it's going to eat the world. Like, do you believe that? Are you a Bitcoin maxi? Are you in some other sort of camp? What are your thoughts on what's happening now with the bull market? I know I'm throwing a lot of questions. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm going to tread lightly here. I don't want to use the word maximalist because of the connotations that...
He's not a maxi. Sakamoto's not a maxi.
Not a maxi, but I would say that the whole ecosystem is really dependent on Bitcoin. I think it's important that Bitcoin preserves its status as number one. I think Bitcoin is our best chance at globally exiting the fiat system or just providing a solid alternative to it. And I think that needs to stay number one. I mean, the use cases are, in my eyes, pretty obvious. Fiat has an expiration date. The global reserve currency has an expiration date. History has shown that.
What do you mean by that?
With our dollar, I mean, we've lost, I believe, 96% of our purchasing power since 1915 or something like that. So it just provides an alternative, sound money where you can just take your fiat, you can put it into Bitcoin, and it's going to appreciate over time.
Yeah, that sounds very certain. I think, I guess,
Not
like,
financial advice.
why is
Not
fiat,
financial advice.
why is fiat bad? Because I agree with you, but like, we've got to really build from the base level.
Yeah. It's bad because there's a group of people,
The Federal Reserve.
we don't have anything yet. Yeah. That can go do whatever they want, whatever they see fit, and it impacts tons of people. They say that inflation is the invisible tax. People that own assets, their assets are going to appreciate. The people that are just, looking to buy, consumer goods are going to get hit pretty hard by inflation. It doesn't really seem like it's happening here in the U.S. I think the CPI is probably not accurate, but in other countries like Venezuela, where there's been, currency crisis, Weimar Germany, there's definitely a use case for sound money.
Yeah. One thing Andreas Anatopoulou talks about is how, like, he's explained Bitcoin to thousands of people. But he says that when he explains it to people who are from Venezuela, it does not take very long for them to fully understand, why it's powerful and why it can change their lives. And I think, it's more difficult for Americans to understand because, the world that's been invented and created by fiat currency is pretty damn good. I've got a TV in front of me and this laptop, but I agree. I think, the Federal Reserve sort of subverts the natural order of the world, which is like you either allocate capital or you spend your time to make capital. And they're the one institution that can basically not do that and create it out of thin air. And when they do create it out of thin air, they are taking from, the people who are allocating capital and giving their time to get that capital. And so it's I'm with you.
Yeah, I think a good way of putting it for people to understand is ask your parents or your grandparents how much it was for like a hamburger, milkshake, and fries, back in their day. And they'll probably say something. Education. Yeah, or college education. They'll say something like, 5 cents to, $5. And now you can't get the same thing for, less than like 15. Maybe in Alabama a little bit cheaper.
Hey man,
but,
no Alabama hate here, okay?
No Alabama hate. It's just
it is a lower cost of living.
It is.
Yeah, definitely lower cost of living.
Gasoline half the price right now as Vegas.
I know, it's crazy.
That could have some other problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, crazy. But I think that really stresses the importance of having a way of opting out of that. I think you can extrapolate 10, 20 years in the future, and then also factor in how much money was printed just in the last year, and that really just demonstrates the use for sound money.
It was a lot of money. Actually, spoiler alert.
It was a lot.
Yeah,
it was a lot of money.
Michael Saylor, probably one of the biggest Bitcoin whales, if not the biggest Bitcoin whale, he basically said the way you should value Bitcoin is what you think the M1 money supply will increase by in the next X years, and like that's how you should value Bitcoin. I totally just forgot the question.
I had a question actually related to Michael Saylor.
It was about taxes, just to
okay.
not forget.
Well, I'm sort of forgetting too. Michael Saylor is a big Bitcoin maximalist, huge Bitcoin maximalist.
MicroStrategy, publicly traded company.
I'm trying to think about how I tied that in. I had it in my head, but I forgot. So let's roll to taxes. Yeah. Come back to me.
Taxes is that you've used this really seductive language of escape the traditional financial system, but what if your Bitcoin appreciates? Like, how do you escape the traditional financial system without participating in potentially unregistered security things, and also with appreciation that the government can't get a piece of? Like, how does the fiat, like how can I live as a citizen in this country and escape? Because they're going to want a piece of any benefit I have.
Yeah.
So I want to turn the cameras off here.
But just never sell. I mean, there's no unrealized capital gains tax. Just never sell.
There you go.
So there we go. Easy answer.
Yeah, I just don't really think in fiat terms. I mean, and I think that what Bitcoin does is it incentivizes saving, which is huge. I price sort of everything in the opportunity cost of Bitcoin. It's like I could buy a couch, or I could take $400, put it in Bitcoin, and maybe that $400 is going to be worth $1,000, or down the road.
That's why he's got no cutlery behind him. It's all going to Bitcoin.
Exactly.
I did remember what I wanted to say, and that brings up another point though, is thinking about things in terms of Bitcoin. And both of these things are related to Michael Saylor, because Michael Saylor and Jeff Ross had a really interesting conversation about thinking in terms. I have no idea. It was just a YouTube video. And I think it was Jeff Ross. It might not have been. I'll try and find it and link it in the show notes. But point is, that was the first person that I had heard thinking of things in Bitcoin, and his argument just made a lot of sense to me. But another thing about Michael Saylor, he went on the My First Million podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with those guys, but basically they did not really jibe. Their chemistry was not great. And one of the questions that Sam Parr asked Michael Saylor was, what are the downsides? Like, what has, one, what are the downsides for Bitcoin in the future? And two, what has making this huge bet, calling Bitcoin hope, done to your company? And Michael Saylor basically said, there are none. There is no downside. And it's like, that just can't be true. So what are the downsides?
What's the downside?
Yeah.
That's what you got, brain, Kyle.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
There's a few downsides. One
Here we
is,
go.
Everyone thinks I'm crazy. I think that, as the price appreciates, it's bittersweet, because it's harder to buy more Bitcoin for less. But it also sort of confirms, what a lot of people have thought, and that, Bitcoin's working, it has a real use case. But when the price is low, or there's a big crash, people think you're crazy for just totally, aping into Bitcoin. The other downside is it's volatile. I don't think it's a downside for me personally, but other people definitely think it's a downside. And a lot of people say it's volatile upwards, which is a good thing, and no one's going to complain about that. But obviously you have your stuff like the 50% drawdowns and things like that. And the way I look at it is, I just don't look and just don't care, because I have a long time horizon. It's just whatever, but I think we're trained to think linearly. I mean, time, is linear, at least the way we understand it. The day is sort of like a linear process. I get up, I go to work, I come home, work out, go to bed, repeat. Stock market up at a 45-degree angle, fairly linear. And then you have this, new Bitcoin thing that's just charts going all over the place. And I think it just makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think it's hard to think exponentially. I think, and this is one of the problems that I have with Bitcoin, is that I think, it's less about the volatility of the price and more about its volatility keeping it from being the use case that it was intended to. So your grandfather, Satoshi, in the white paper, he talks about it being digital cash. And as digital cash, you cannot have something be so volatile as a medium of exchange, where in between the time that I send it to you and you get the goods, it's not remittable, I guess is the word. And so I think, it doesn't bother me either. I hold Bitcoin, and when I see the price drop, it's like, I probably should be buying right now, because I believe that in the future it'll be higher. But I think, it's sort of, the argument is that the volatility keeps it from being its ultimate desired use case. And so what do you think about the discrepancies between the white paper and sort of the narrative that exists around Bitcoin today?
Yeah, good question. I think that Pomp talks about this a lot too. One Bitcoin is just one Bitcoin, and the volatility is just people's perceptions of it. Totally understand that it's not the best right now for transacting, but I think it has an entirely different use case. We're in price discovery basically every day, trying to figure out, what this thing is, how to price it accordingly. And I think it'll only get more stable over the long run.
Well, I think that, Kyle and I have both read recently The Infinite Machine by Camila Russo. Very good book about crypto for anyone.
We'd love to have Camila Russo on if she ever listens to this.
I think the more direct way, you and I do that sometimes, and I think the more direct way is to ask them. Unless someone's listening and knows Camila Russo. Please connect the dots.
Hey, you never know.
In 2017, when Ethereum and Bitcoin were both getting blown up out of proportion, and this might be romanticized, but Vitalik basically said it was a bad thing that Ethereum was priced that high because it was not in proportion to the actual use case. Like, the adoption was one. If you priced it on adoption and like real world value it provided, besides just speculation, it should be like 1/10 the price. And he figured the PR of it rising and crashing would make everyone think it's like a scam. And if it was like actually growing more slowly and appropriately, it would be better. So I like the way you contextualize things in terms of we're still in price discovery and how much speculation versus Bitcoin's actually being used in Venezuela and Argentina for people to transact without their governments.
Totally, and
I think that's difficult.
Yeah, and obviously the price is pretty correlated with the halving with Bitcoin. So obviously that was the effect of that, and whether or not it should be priced like that. I think the ultimate thing about this is it's a 24/7 free market, and the market just gets to decide what the correct price should be.
There's no government to come save you, and that's one thing that I really liked is like we saw a 50% drawdown or whatever it was last week, and there were no bailouts. Like people that had leverage, they got wiped out. Like sayonara, sucker. Like,
learn your lesson.
I think that Vitalik's statements in 2017 made a lot of sense. It's like how many people are bankless? Like how many people has the desired use cases that we've dreamed of actually come true? And because the answer is no, do these prices reflect that reality? But recently, and in a bullish way, he was like, I think cryptos are close to being ready for the mainstream and like are on track to get there. And so, that's sort of a reversal of what we saw him say in 2017 in this bull run. And so, as someone who's just so smart and like, Vitalik, big fan, but,
totally.
So it's just, that was a bullish sign for me for the future is that he's saying that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I was going to bring it somewhere else unless you had a comment.
No, go for it.
Okay. This is really just a hard left turn here. Another hard fork.
Damn it.
Okay. I love it.
But burning question. Kyle's all mad at me, but he's fake mad. You got hired as the chief meme officer. Do you still make memes for Pomp? Like, has that actually been an important part of your role?
Yeah. So he hits me up every once in a while to make him some memes. I think the most recent was the Bitcoin pizza. I don't think he ended up tweeting out, but I made one that he retweeted of this guy just like hitting golf balls, and I replaced the golf balls with pizzas, and I replaced the guy's face with Pomp. That one did pretty well on Twitter. And then he also had some beef with Jason Calacanis, early Uber investor. His wife holds a bunch of Bitcoin, but he's kind of on the fence about it. They went on CNBC, duked it out, and then like a day later they went back again, did the same thing. So I made some memes for him there. I like put him on a Star Wars clip, and Pomp was Yoda saying like, "You don't understand" or something like that.
That's funny. So Pomp has a pretty good. Question. Go for it, Lewis.
What are the tools you use to make your memes? Are you Adobe Photoshop? You like actually have a skill set? Are there no-code tools that just make this so easy that like any idiot could like, if they have an idea, they could put it on the meme? What's like your secret sauce?
Yeah, so no Photoshop. What I usually do, my meme process is I work backwards. I have an idea, and then I find a meme for it. Good example of that, I eat Chipotle every day for lunch pretty much. I have one right off the street. I had it for lunch today. I had this meme of this guy. It's the guy with the two buttons, and he's like sweating. I can't make a decision. And it's like, go to Chipotle for lunch or go to Chipotle for lunch. So I just like come up with these scenarios. A lot of them pertain to Bitcoin and things like that, and then kind of work backwards from there. In terms of tools, I honestly just use Snapchat and like iMovie on my phone.
It's kind of like when you're a writer and you look at the world through the lens of like you're like capturing thoughts. Shout out David Perel's 50 like article email, but instead of you being a writer, you're a memer, and it's just like the whole world's a meme. Like
I think in sats and memes, that's it.
All right, so but what is your Chipotle order? And
I'm pretty plain. Yeah, I just get like a burrito with chicken, rice, cheese, queso, and always get chips.
Queso. See, that's a hot take.
Yeah.
So another question.
We might have to end the call here.
Back on that. I have no problems with your Chipotle order.
Appreciate it.
Mine's completely different, but no problems with yours, right?
Yeah.
So another question is, what are some companies in the crypto space? I think a lot of our listeners, match their demographic. They're young. They're looking for jobs, or if they want to start a company, but if they don't want to start a company, they want to work somewhere that doesn't suck to work. What are some companies that you've heard just like fantastic things? Like working there, sweet. They take care of you. You don't hate your life.
So a lot of people are super excited about BlockFi. Obviously, Pomp's an investor there. Super cool company. It had some bad press over the past week or so, but everyone that I interact with at BlockFi is super awesome. I think they're building a really good product. So BlockFi is number one. Another one that I'm excited about is Sovereign. They recently joined the job board. Pomp's also an investor there, and they're just trying to build DeFi on top of Bitcoin, which I think is super cool. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, that's what we talked about it, but DeFi on Bitcoin is what Pomp says is the most underpriced thing right now, and so Sovereign might be a good thing to look at. I know you mentioned Jack Mallers. Who are your other favorite Bitcoin entrepreneurs and founders?
Oh, can I just twist that into like general influencers, like people to go to for information?
No.
Yes.
In terms of entrepreneurs, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, I think he's awesome. Flory and Zach at BlockFi. But in terms of like influencers and people I go to for information, Saylor, Breedlove, Pomp, Nick Carter, that whole crew.
That's a good list.
Flory is sliding into your DMs. It's not her. There's so many Flory fakes on Twitter right now.
There's so many fakes of everyone in the crypto space.
I've been getting attacked by the Flory fakes. Because I sent her a DM. I pitched her on the podcast, and she's not replied yet. So if you know Camila or Flory, the co-founder of BlockFi.
I've had no interaction with Flory, so I can't help you there, but maybe.
Point
I'll
is,
see it.
I sent her a DM, and I got flooded with fake Flory DMs after that. And, they're not getting my
Maybe she sent the Cyber Hornets to come get you.
I don't know if you sent it to the right one then. So
if the fake ones have 20,000 followers, we're all in trouble.
I think that we will.
Actually, I saw a fake one that was verified and had like 12,000 followers the other day. It was crazy.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
But you go and it was like all Ariana Grande like fan page stuff. So I'm not sure how they went from Ariana Grande fan page to scamming people.
What I'm learning from this is I'm going to go back to the drawing board and make sure I send it to the right Flory.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we'll transition now to what we like to call our bonus round. Just a few quick questions and we'll wrap up.
Sure.
So I know, I think that this is probably how you're going to see your life in the future is like you had baseball and you had crypto. And so are there any, similarities, anything that you took from baseball that you apply today to your life? Obviously it was a huge part of your life. So there's a lot of things, but you just riff on that.
Yeah, totally. I think that Bitcoin and baseball are similar in that you never know what the day is going to hold. And sometimes when stuff feels like really bad, you're just around the corner is greatness. When you go 0 for 10 or 0 for 20 in baseball, like you feel like you're never going to get a hit again. When Bitcoin's down 50%, you feel like this is it. It's the end of the road. So just kind of maintaining like a neutral outlook is number one. Two, just working hard. I mean, in baseball, you don't usually need to be huge. You don't need to be the fastest. Obviously, the MLB players are outliers, but you can make it pretty far with a good work ethic in baseball. And I found the same thing with the job board and all this too. It's just like, just learn by doing, just put yourself out there, put yourself in uncomfortable situations and just, sink or swim. And then just like learning how to, connect with a bunch of different people, help people out and that sort of thing too.
Great answer. So here's an opportunity for redemption, at least in Kyle's eyes. I'm still not upset with you about Chipotle. But you're from Oregon, Portland specifically, to my knowledge. That's kind of a funky town with a lot of vibes. A
lot of vibes.
A lot of vibes. What's the best place to get coffee in Portland and coffee order?
Really good question. So there's a place right up the road for me. I walk there, pretty much as often as I walk to Chipotle. It's called Jim and Patty's. Really good coffee, really good breakfast sandwiches. They put it on a biscuit. So good. I'm a Starbucks guy too. Starbucks started in Seattle, which isn't too far. I like the Pike Place roast. I just drink black coffee. So I would say those two. Starbucks is kind of a crap answer, but it's convenient.
Does your cute place accept Bitcoin as payment?
They don't accept Bitcoin.
Last question for me. Bitcoin price, let's just say 10 years from now.
10 years from now. Oof.
May 26, 2031.
Oh, geez. It's weird to think how old I'll be then.
We'll send you this on that day. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Probably not.
You're gonna remember
the time capsule.
Yeah, I'll remind me, exclamation point.
Yeah, I think 10 years from now. Wow. A lot of stuff needs to happen.
Crypto's only 10 years old. I know this might have been the wrong time frame.
Yeah, and then you just have to figure in how many more people are. I think it's similar to early adoption of the internet. A lot of people think it's dumb. A lot of people think there's no use case for it. Only a small percentage, if you look at the distribution of like adopters, we're still, very much so in the early adopter cohort there. In terms of actual price prediction, though, I think we could see Bitcoin upwards of 1 million priced in US dollars 10 years from now.
I agree.
Well, priced in US dollars, I mean that just could mean the dollars.
Well, one Bitcoin's one Bitcoin. So if you want my Bitcoin price prediction, one Bitcoin's going to be one Bitcoin in 10 years.
There you go. Yeah, your Bitcoin supply prediction. That's an easier answer.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just forgot my question. Was a super good question. I promise. It was. Kyle, you sure you don't have another question? I don't know why I just didn't write it down. Where did that come to me?
We're gonna just keep talking until you think of it.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was a good question.
Sorry, Kyle, I didn't mean to put you
You
on.
just edit it out, right? No.
Yeah, let me see. Let's see here. Other blockchains. So Solana. You got BSC. Obviously, Ethereum. Are there any that you think have potentials to be huge? Or I don't know how to ask that question properly.
Yeah. So when I said I wasn't a maximalist, I think that there are going to be use cases, for other blockchains and for other projects. I think one thing that we're going to see unfold in the next, couple years is going to be this proof of work versus proof of stake battle. Ethereum's moving to proof of stake. A lot of people like it because of the environmental or lack thereof impacts, they say. Don't want to get too much outside of my area of expertise and comment on something I don't know a whole lot about. But what I have heard recently, and actually was brought to my attention by Rockstar Dev, who works with Maulers at Strike, is that proof of stake is actually is super similar to our current financial system, in that you stake more coins, you have more power. You have more money in our system, you have more influence. Proof of work, everyone, has an equal say. It's fully democratized. A lot of people say, well, if it's so democratized and there's no kings, why can someone like Elon crash the price? And that goes back to just, it's a free market. We're always going to look up to people like that. But that doesn't mean that the network itself is centralized.
I mean, it just goes to show how early we are. I think it's bullish, especially when the price is 70,000 and one man can move the market that much. I think that, that just goes to show how immature it is. But hopefully Lewis has his question ready to fire away.
Let's hear it.
So as Kyle mentioned, Satoshi Nakamoto is your grandfather. But just curious, you have a lot of exposure in the space. You get to talk theoretically to a lot of people who theoretically know a lot. Do you have a theory on the actual identity of Satoshi? It doesn't have to be a person, just are you sure it's a group, it's a person? It's
well, I mean, he knows him personally.
Besides the fact that you actually know him personally.
Not my grandpa. I don't want to get in trouble with the community. Random kid, Colton Sakamoto, says he's related to Satoshi.
No, we're saying it. It's true.
Okay, all right. who I think it is, I don't know. Obviously, no one knows. I don't have like a great theory on it. Pete Rizzo's podcast with Pomp pretty recently was good. He kind of tracks Satoshi throughout. I think it's really important that we don't know who it is, just, for that centralization or lack thereof figure. I think that's super important for the mission of Bitcoin. I mean, you have your handful of people that everyone thinks it is, your Hal Finneys, your Nick Szabos, that type of thing. I don't know. It's a mystery.
That's the answer we all like to hear. Another question for me, actually, and this will be my last one, I promise.
Said last question.
Right. Perfect.
I'm not going to.
That was 2 questions ago, actually. But so in my email that I sent to you originally, just responding and saying, that I wasn't going to do the Pomp Crypto course, I wrote to Pomp about how I think that, the heights that he could potentially reach are probably like really unmatched in history. Like, I think that his future value, whether or not he really hits the highest bar, is so high that it's kind of hard to put into words.
Do you think why? First, real quick.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of things. I know a lot about the guy. So like military background, obviously super disciplined. Has built this audience around, an industry. It's like, it comes back to the entrepreneur thing. It's like, bad entrepreneur, good market, they're probably going to do all right. Good entrepreneur, bad market, they're probably screwed. And Pomp is doing really well in a really good market that's set up for the future. He was doing really good investments beforehand with, the startups that he invested in. He had Snapchat. He has experience at Facebook, and now, like, in the crypto space, it's almost a badge of honor for him to have invested in you. And so, like, I don't know, obviously, and him better than me, and this might just be completely out of left field, but I feel like if I owned a company, I would give Pomp better terms than other investors because of the clout that he brings, and I think it's deserved. And I think that, with his followers, with the media, I think with the Bitcoin, like the future of that, I think that he could be a trillionaire. I know that's a hot take, but I really do believe that he could be. And so, like, what do you think?
Yeah, I've learned so much from working with him in just the short time that we have. But first of all, you probably wonder on the outside, like, what's this guy like? He's tweeting all the time. He's all over. He has his YouTube. He has podcasts. Seems like the guy never sleeps. Like, what's he actually like? And he's a really good dude. Mm-hmm. Like, what you see is what I've got with him. He gives me, pretty much full autonomy with the course to do whatever I see fit. And same thing with the job board. So he's just a good dude. And I think, him being authentic really shows. And I think that's part of how he's built his audience. Secondly, the guy just works super hard. He is always working on something. And I think to work that hard, you have to really enjoy it. It probably doesn't feel like work to him, doing podcasts, interviewing cool people like you guys are doing, helping people get jobs or whatnot. I think he really just enjoys the process of winning and helping win as well.
Yeah.
He plays positive sum games. Yeah. Balaji talks a lot about the win and help win. And I think Pomp kind of epitomizes that, but plays positive sum games, wants everyone around him to succeed. I think that's why a lot of people want him, on the investment team as well. And then the last thing is the guy just plays like he has nothing to lose. He's always looking for asymmetric bets. He talked about this on his podcast with Matt James, The Bachelor, when I was listening to today. And he said his advice to his 20-year-old self was just to take bigger hacks. Going back to the baseball analogy, he actually said slugging percentage, not batting average, which is something I totally agree with. It's like you might as well, take a big hack and try and hit the ball over the fence because that's a run rather than just trying to slap a single the other way and hoping that other people hit you around too. And he said something else that stood out. It's like the work for, succeeding is going to be the same whether you want to be average or you want to be exceptional. Obviously, if you're exceptional, it's going to be a little bit harder, but why not just take that extra step if the upside is asymmetrical?
Absolutely. That's a really good answer. Exactly what I had hoped for. And we don't know him, but we will know him. We will get him on the podcast. It's
We'll meet him in Miami.
Totally.
I don't know. I'm not
Right.
gonna be the guy who tries to meet Pomp.
Are you guys going?
I'm going.
I'm not going.
Let's go. Yeah, I'll be there.
I will not be there.
Come on, Kyle. You're already over there.
Long story. I will not be in
Story for
attendance
another
though. Right. I do think that we could, have a whole podcast on Balaji. Lots to unpack there.
I do have one more question.
Go for it,
Yeah.
Luis.
We'll probably wrap up. But one common theme we've kind of observed on the podcast and studied ourselves is the apprenticeship model, which is kind of what you're in right now, right? A very, I'm not going to say unstructured, but like, your job description was meme officer. Now you're basically the CEO of a company and I don't know what your role is at the course, but it sounds like you have a lot of autonomy there too. So do you recommend, young people start their career with apprenticeships as opposed to, you're yourself just applying for the roles in a crypto company? And if so, how do you advise someone find the right person to apprentice and get them to want to take you on as a mentee?
Yeah. So I think you have to learn by doing with anything. I got my MBA and I always joke around that I learned nothing. Similar to what I say to people that are like, should I invest in crypto? Just get off the sidelines is my advice and do what you're comfortable with. Start somewhere. You got to put one foot in front of the other. You got to figure it out. You got to dive in and sink or swim. In terms of like finding mentors, most people in a situation, where they're successful, I think want to help other people too, by and large. I mean, obviously you have your outliers that, might not be approachable or whatever, but I think people want to help. So just, continuing to reach out to people that you want to, help out.
Well, Colton, I think that this has been a great podcast. We're both really grateful to you for coming on and for shooting the shit with us. Where should we send people to find you and to learn more about everything we've talked about?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at CJ Sakamoto 15. That's probably where I'm most active. I have the other stuff, don't use it as much. Don't have any TikTok dances or anything like that I'm known for. But we'll have some memes on Twitter, and you guys can follow me there. PompCryptoJobs.com. Thanks, Colton. Thanks, Pomp. Thanks, Luis. Appreciate it.
I was going to say, if you want to read some really, really solid essay that Colton Sakamoto wrote, just look up Bitcoin white paper. Real good.
Exactly.
Right, we'll wrap it up here.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And that wraps up our interview with Colton Sakamoto, the grandson of Satoshi Nakamoto, the founder of Bitcoin. Fun fact, I know we covered it in the interview, but I just wanted to talk about it one more time. No, but really, I've got 3 quick takeaways from this awesome interview that we just did. The first is picking the right market. I know I talked about it a little bit in the interview, but there's this really neat saying that I like a lot, and it's, a bad entrepreneur in a good market is going to do pretty well, but a great entrepreneur in a bad market won't get very far. And I think that Colton has picked a really good market to be in, especially for the next 10, 20 years as crypto and blockchains eat the world, as we say. I think that choosing crypto as sort of the space in which you're innovating is genius. And I think that the way that Colton is doing it specifically is also genius. The second is that you never know what hitting send might do for your life. He just randomly decided that he was going to tweet back at Pomp when Pomp put out a meme competition, and he was like, okay, like what's the worst that could happen? And as it turns out, it had a pretty big upside because it changed his entire life. He got to work on Pomp Crypto Jobs. He got to work on Maven. He's now super connected with Pomp. He was just at the Bitcoin conference. I mean, his entire life changed pretty much from creating, and most importantly, sending the meme out. And then the third thing is something that I was thinking about when I was writing that second takeaway, and it's that it often all happens at once. In Tools of Titans, a book by Tim Ferriss, there's a guy who talks about Tim Ferriss talks about a guy who journals every day. He had journaled every day, every night for like 20 years. And he said that one of his most important takeaways is just how unevenly distributed some of his biggest breakaway moments were, and how a lot of times it'll just be one weekend and his entire life changes in one weekend. And so, that is just to say, keep going, keep working at things, even if they might seem pointless, because oftentimes it all happens at once. And those are my takeaways. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing, Kyle. 3 takeaways for me as well. First one is about taking the shot. He talked about how he almost didn't send the meme. He almost didn't say anything. And then he said, you know what, let's just see what happens. So to take that shot, you never know what will happen. Other half takeaway there is just trust you'll figure it out. When Pomp was like, hey, do you also want to help me with this job site? Or also want to help me with this course? He didn't know how to do either of those things, but he trusted he would learn and figure it out. And if you look it up, he's done a pretty good job. Second takeaway is a glimpse into the future of the crypto internet enabled future. We asked at one point, Colton goes, yep, I think in terms of memes and sats. So if memes are the communication currency and sats are the currency, that's just a little glimpse of the future. I thought that was a funny line. Third takeaway about actually getting a job in crypto. Dev is in high demand, but also so is knowledge and passion. If you don't want to get a technical job, what the really non-technical jobs care about is, one, some understanding of finance, but also just knowledge and passion about crypto. That's all I have to say about this episode. Thank you for listening. If you're not already, please subscribe. And otherwise, we'll see you in a week or so with the next episode. Bye-bye.